interesting because when I heard about the looking glass, it was after I'd heard about something, and we interviewed one of the people for Packing from Mars who worked on a project called the chronovisor. And I don't know, a picture, like, I don't know, like a loose, I don't know if you call it a picture, but it's sort of a depiction of this guy called Pellegrino Ernetti. He was a pastor working in the Vatican. He was also a physicist. And his passion was to try and figure out a way to capture audio signals, which had been, his theory was that if because audio is resonance, it's frequency and vibration, and it feeds the magnetic field of the planet. And we know that our entire planet is surrounded by a magnetic field, and so he figured out there must be a way you can capture sort of the old remnant resonances of these audio files that are still kind of stored in the magnetosphere, like a giant you could say hard drive around the planet. And he was so successful at doing it that it was not just actual sound that he captured, but he actually captured pictures, gritty looking pictures. And but they were able to, like, with the device that he created, project sort of a really gritty looking, grainy looking, almost 3D holographic, like black and white image of events that had taken place in the past, as crazy as this sounds. And this was in the 1950s, okay? So that device was shown to the Vatican and to some high brass and so Italian high brass, but very quickly vanished because the people that saw it, they were doing tests with it, and they could go back in time and they could listen to, or they, of course, the Vatican wanted to know the crucifixion, right? Is it real? Did it happen? Can we prove it? Can we show it? And before all that got out, it went under, and it only to surface about 20 years later. In another project that the man that we interviewed for Packing from Mars, Andrew Bushago, was involved in, called Project Pegasus, which he said was a combination of something that Nikola Tesla had been creating and the chronovisor. The only picture I could maybe show you guys is this one, which is the Tesla magical disc, they called it. And apparently Tesla, he's kind of they thought of him as this crazy electrician he's pretty much been erased out of the history books, because everyone remembers Marconi and Thomas Edison. They've heard of Tesla coils, and now of course Elon Musk stole the name for Tesla cars, but essentially what happened is you have Tesla being this amazing scientist who figured out a whole different form of physics, not going on like Einstein's theory of relativity, which is completely flawed, and he plagiarized it anyway, it wasn't even his. But Tesla took this totally different concept of the universe, and he figured out ways to generate electricity wirelessly. All our cell phones, wireless mobile technology, it all comes out of Tesla's work. And of course, because as soon as he figured out how to do electricity wirelessly, his financier, JP Morgan, figured out, hey, we're not going to make any money on this, so let's pull the plug. And his amazing Wardenclyffe Tower, which he had created, where he was gonna create the first live demonstration of wirelessly transmitted electricity across the ocean, was knocked out. And that was the end, and we never really heard of Tesla again, although he was involved on working on the technology behind the Philadelphia experiment. Now that's something maybe some of your viewers have also heard about. All these things, there's been films about, and there's been whispers about on the internet. Okay, so fast forward, so we have this technology that somehow allows people to peer into other times, remnant times, and maybe not even the future, maybe also the past, and other versions of the present and different timelines. It works into the idea that we don't just live in one dimension or in one timeline. And in quantum physics now, they're coming up with new models and new understandings of the universe that make it clear that we are essentially working in like parallel timelines. And as soon as we make one decision to maybe go right instead of left, or go to the store or not go to the store, we've altered our timeline and created a version of the timeline which is customized to our own new preference. But the way eternity in the universe is supposed to work according to quantum physics is that there also was a version of you that made the other decision, and he went to the store or he went to the movie or didn't or whatever, you know. So these versions of the timeline are virtually invisible, but they're still running parallel to you in another dimension. And so the looking glass technology apparently is based on technology that actually is able to view these timelines. And they're you know, they found them in like like sealed canisters in Iraq, and they, in these canisters they found building plans for something which looks like this, you know, which was basically a device that had like a water base, and it had a plasma core, and it had these rotating three-dimensional spirals. And when you fire it up, basically the spirals begin to spin faster and faster and faster, to the point where the plasma ball generates this holographic 3D image. And the people, when they discovered it the first time, they realized what they were looking at was their reality. They were looking at their world, but they could recognize that it was in the future. So if you're if you're watching a news broadcast, and the news broadcast, you know, if you watch whatever you watch, if you watch CNN, or if you're a Fox person, right, whatever, you'd see the newscast and you would realize they were talking about events that hadn't happened yet. And it's I mean, you can imagine, you know, what the people that found it, you know, what was going on in their minds, right? And you know, they found it because they had, you know, this is another sort of side topic, but essentially in 1947 there was something called the Roswell crash, and there was a series of about 7 different crashes that began to transpire over the course of the next few years up until 1952. And in each of these crashes, you know, and these ones, they basically, this document here is the proof that, you know, that this has happened. It's a briefing, a short briefing that got leaked, and it was tested and verified for being authentic. And they found in this document that they actually captured an extraterrestrial called a J-Rod. Mm-hmm. And this extraterrestrial began a series of, they held him captive in a way for a few years. And during that time, they basically transcribed hundreds of thousands of pages of conversation. And the nutshell of those conversations are described in this document. And so you realize that there's multiple things going on here. There's not just the fact that, you know, there's this looking glass technology, but they found the looking glass technology because of this interaction with these extraterrestrials, who, and the one in the case of J-Rod, came from 52,000 years in the future.
Right, I'll pause that for the moment because I've just got some commercial intel. World War III has already begun. And I'm just checking this. Oh. Gonna keep hacking into the internet or what?
One dimension or in one timeline. And in quantum physics now.
Oh, for God's sake, it's so hot. Frequencies are strong. Right, it's working. Right, so I've got some intel. Oh, they just hacked into my computer, you twats. Just F off. Oh, my head is hurting like anything. Gotta turn my Wi-Fi off, right? I don't care. When it ended my fucking birthday, right, all this bastard effing monkeys. So I've got to get a hot drink and well, stuff it, you know. In England, they're just lying, you know. I don't know anywhere else in the West, but they're lying. And I can see where they're hacking. I've got to fish up. Running down my house. Get in me, it's a miracle. A true blue miracle. Do 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 do. Boom. I'm dreaming. Not so up for White Christmas. Yeah, so I'm just trying out this stream app. This is a demonic times, and this is not to be afraid. We have the shape-shifting demons right outside my bloody home. I don't know yet how to use this software. But anyway, I can see the chat and I can see they're still hacking into the main internet of things. Right, I'm going to read out what I know. And I should have had some cash in my bank, but I don't care anymore. Situation on the 23rd of the 9th, 2022, World War III has begun. But the truth is being withheld from the public. If you really want to go and investigate, I would suggest to go on Brighton.com and on the podcast. Let's see if I can listen to it here. Natural News. Mike Adams. Chaos. Already signed up to this. So chaos, fallout, instantly, NATO, nuclear war, nuclear weapons, risks, Russia, Ukraine, world war. Okay. The global reset's already there. So basically, you simply ain't gonna hear or being told this because your so-called puppet servants, governments, and dishonest media outlets are dedicated to keeping you in the dark. After all, they want to use the remaining time to stockpile food, ammunition, medical supplies, and precious metals for themselves. And this can only be accomplished by withholding the truth about the situation as long as possible. Now, a Prime Minister of Serbia, I think it's pronounced as, may be exception to this, as he's now publicly warning the world is about to experience a great world conflict that will likely begin in the next 2 months. So now September, October, November, because don't forget the Vatican's calling in its assets on the 1st November 2022, and that's in Italy. I can't pronounce the name here because it's quite too long. Made the alarming comments during the first day UN Assembly in New York City, in America. Now, reports is by a well-known individual with a good report on it. Paul Watson at Summit News. I assume that we're learning the phrase of the special military operation and approaching a major armed conflict. And now the question becomes, where is the line? And where after a certain time, maybe a month or two, or even we will enter a great world conflict not seen since the Second World War. NATO is already at war with Russia, and Putin is gearing up for a continental battle. What's happening is that the psychopathic Western nations, which I agree with that one, some areas anyway, the real aggressors in this war have unleashed not just suicide sanctions against Russia, but also running Ukraine's military operations against Russia. This means NATO is already in war, and if NATO won't admit it yet, worse yet, NATO leaders are quietly, openly demanding the complete destruction of Russia and the exploitation of Russia's natural resources, which is of course the entire model of the global exploitation and typically carried out by the West. And it disrupt, pillage, control, that the CIA model, that's in America, has been unleashed against other nations for decades. Educate yourself to law, you can research history of wars and the bankers' wars really. Conditions are already a long past the point of negotiations or de-escalation between Russia and the West. Psychopathic leaders of the West, quotes a couple of them, comes to mind. Russia haters who are determined to carry out genocide against the Russian people, and even it means destroying their own economies. Now, agriculturally, supply chains in the process. Now, these psychopaths, Putin has come to realise, can't be reasoned with or trusted to abide by agreements whatsoever. Now Russia realises it must fight or die. That's where we are right now. Unfortunately, the insanity of the Western nations has escalated this conflict to a condition where, however, launches nukes first, and this nuclear, oh, you need to get your iodine in, protection for any fallout, whatever it may be. The radiation is strong at the moment. Has the advantage. This is a very dangerous, dramatic, obviously, and it stems from the fact that the West has. I'm getting headaches now. They just don't want me to talk about this. Has repeatedly signalled it will not allow the existence of Russia in its new world order, the vision of planet Earth, with friends like and it quotes which ones, calling the shots who need enemies. Now Russia has a 30-year plus advantage over the West in terms of nuclear weapons and air defences. An important realisation in all that is NATO. Nuclear arsenal is ancient, mostly running on designated, originally engineered in the 1970s. So while Russian nuclear capability is at least 2 generations ahead, modelized with hyperguide re-entry vehicles, extensive maneuver capabilities for IBMS and hypersonic cruise missiles, which are nuclear capability, and highly advanced anti-air defensive systems that can even intercept and take down incoming ICBMs. In addition, Russia possesses secret doomsday weapons, far beyond their, I won't say keywords here, that the world hasn't even seen yet. On the current territory, these weapons are going to be introduced to the West without any warning whatsoever, resulting in the complete annihilation of Western European governments, currencies and industry. We're going back to the Stone Age, basically. I have no doubt whatsoever that Russia has already designated the targets of its first strike, and that those targets include, get this, London, England, Paris, Berlin, Warsaw, US Navy fleets, virtually all military bases across Western Europe. We are now just one launch away from a civilization-ending event. The US and NATO have deluded themselves into thinking they can win a nuclear exchange with Russia. And that's just in the delusion of thinking men can get pregnant. Well, you never know these days. Or that money printing didn't cause inflation. Nobility, the brain-dead Biden, which is USA president, remains insistent that both of these, uh, well, I won't quote that over here on this platform. Over the past 2 decades, they are recently led by insanity of these individuals. The West has become fully invested on delusional thinking, fairy-tale narratives that have no connection with reality, while the rest has been waging a propaganda negative narrative war. Russia has been engineering the most advanced nuclear weapons. Once Russia exchange begins, there's no question whatsoever about the outcome. Russia will lose a few million people, far less than that what they lost in World War II. But they will alienate Germany, Poland, France, and the United Kingdom. Western Europe will be plunged into a generation of despair and darkness. That's what they're talking about, dark winter. While the US suffers a cascading financial collapse due to exposure to European bank currencies and debt markets. That's why UK's announced a mini budget. Don't be fooled by that. Western journalists and whatever it's called are incapable of seeing this reality, and they are simply incapable of acting to stop it. They are caught in their own delusional world of self-inflicted brainwashing and propaganda. Now they can bully Russia into calculating to the Western insane demands, but Russia is no third world nation, and Russia can't be economically dismantled with Western sanctions. Russia has its own domestic supply chain with literally everything it needs to feed its people. Built more weapons and earned a fortune in exports of energy and commodities to willing trade partners like China, Turkey, Iran and India. Finally, Putin will not back down. He is far more intelligent than any other cognitive challenge lunatic is running USA and UK or NATO countries. In the chess match between Putin and Biden, you'll probably see Joe Biden alignment with remote controlled vibrating diapers to send him chess moves, signals for his you-know-what, and he wouldn't understand the meaning of chess negotiations. The leader of the West nations is so utterly incompetent that they don't even qualify as clowns, since good clowns are actually intelligent, capable communicators. He can make people laugh, Biden, and wow. The West is already grossly miscalculated with suicide sanctions, but still won't admit to their errors. As proof of his incompetence, the Western nations consider the fact that their suicide sanctions against Russia, originally implemented to try to force Russia into a currency collapse, has had the opposite effect. The sanctions are destroying the euro, not the ruble, and now all Western European faces a winter of darkness, famine, and freezing to death. That's on top of the permanent uh, yeah, destabilisation messing about industries, European industries, is already underway, with 70% of metals smeltering and production already offline Fertilizer production has gone to a halt. The Nord Stream 1 pipeline has been halted, and to add insult to injury, Belgium is proudly announcing shutting down nuclear power plant. Right as Belgium faces an energy scarcity. Oh gosh. Germany, meanwhile, is putting another 8 billion into bailing out Upper NUPER, a major natural gas provider, thus on top of the 15 billion already spent to prevent the collapse. Germany industrial base is being wiped out, has stolen very quickly at speed, and no one in Germany government is telling the German people they won't have jobs as industry collapses. Putin must be astonished at the speed of which Western European, and Germany in particular, destroying itself. Recall that Germany destroyed Western Europe twice already: World War One, World War Two, and now Germany, still largely run by Nazis, is leading the way to total destruction of Europe yet again. At one level, Putin need not launch any nukes at all. He merely needs to wait for the winter to kick in, and for the laws of these economics to do the rest. Now the Greens must be proud. Entire forests are being cleared out for firewood. Yesterday, the author of this article says, I spoke with a war correspondent, Michael Young. He had just travelled through the Germany. My interview with him will be posted tomorrow on Brighton.com. He told me the forests are being cleared out everywhere across Germany, and at least he could see in a desperate effort by the people to stockpile firewood for the coming winter. This is the new green agenda on parade: clear cutting forests, and it'll take decades to grow back. All the dead forests because at least Germany didn't burn fossils. Doesn't anybody realise that the 19th century economically can't support a 21st population? Famine is a mathematical certainty. To stop this crisis, all Germany has to do is apologise to Russia, drop the economic sanctions, and bag a certain gas pipeline deal to turn the gas back on. But no, they wouldn't dare do that, even if hundreds of thousands of German citizens starve to death and die of exposure. In exactly the same way, Adolf Hitler threw starving, freezing German soldiers into Russia's defences lines back in 1943. Today, their own citizens, it's a desperate bid to try to economically harm Russia, and isn't even accomplishing that. In the Battle of, and it quotes a certain area, the Soviet Union surrounded and defeated Germany's Sixth Army, which surrendered more than 220,000 soldiers to the Russians. Today, Germany is willing to sacrifice millions of its own citizens, just providing that Nazi-style suicide manoeuvres remain alive and well in Berlin, even generations after the outcome of World War Two. You can beat the Nazis out of that Russia, but you can't beat the Nazis' tendencies out of German political leaders. Bloody hell.
Which that's where you can get iodine 131 or even cesium 137 or what have you. If you're breathing it in, pectin's not going to do a thing. You can eat all pectin all day long. You're just going to poop out more pectin. It's not going to take radiation out of your lungs or your blood or the tissues that were already served by your blood or any of that. No, it's not going to do anything. Pectin only works for radiation that you eat. So it would be better not to eat radioactive food in the first place. Hence the reason to get yourself a good radiation detector so that you can scan your food or your water or your milk or whatever before you drink it or eat it. See, you don't need pectin if you can just eat non-irradiated food, which brings up the whole point of stored food. Your stored food is not radioactive because it wasn't grown in, fallout soils or anything like that. So for several weeks after a nuclear event, you can just eat stored food. Or even for several months, eat stored food. Or if you do buy something from the grocery store, if it's even functioning, hit it with your radiation meter, your little Geiger counter. Go full Mad Max. What's a little fallout, buddy? That whole scene. Scan it. If it's radioactive, don't eat it, okay? Now, the reason so many people in Japan in World War II, following, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the reason they ate pectin, because nobody had radiation meters. So they just assumed that the food and the drinks that they were consuming were radioactive. It was probably a fairly accurate assumption, so they just slammed a lot of pectin. And they slammed fermented miso soup as well, which helps in different kinds of ways. So they were just doing that by default. They didn't know if they were eating radioactive food. Whereas today, you can buy radiation meters. Well, maybe not literally today, since they could be sold out, but there are some very good radiation meters that you could buy at retail that you should use for this purpose. So make sure you've got iodine, make sure you've got a good Geiger counter or something similar that really works, so you can scan all your food and water, and then make sure you have obviously a good water filter. And
So I can't go too much at the moment. I really damaged my shoulders. So that's what is implied already.
and then make sure you have obviously a good water filter. And
So I can't. I'll get used to the new software. So just a quick update. I'm obviously still being shadow banned. This is very demonic times we're living in, and the worldwide famine is amongst us already. You see, people are getting distracted by watching reactions to other people's videos. Oh, Jesus, give me a headache. Didn't sleep at all well last night. So I'm using a different app, just observing. So full moon's coming up, and the digitalization is already here. So if you're spiritual, yeah, I've got to turn on my Wi-Fi in a minute, because it's no point. There's a lot of stuff going on, and there's satanic, demonic activities on this earth is ramping up. So the demonic, like Antichrist, you know, all this orchestrated global control is already here. So the advancement in technology is already here. And go back and observe. Now we got potential solar effects of the weather on top. Today's date, tomorrow, and the day after. Now I was looking at dates for the 24th. I would just be prepared spiritually as you can, because, well, you just never know. Tomorrow's Sabbath day, true Saturday. Yeah, there's alternative media, social media out there. But anyway, I've got to call it a day and shut my internet down.